Hey everyone, Reid Henrichs of Valor, and the purpose of this video today is to take a firm stance in favor of freedom, rejecting statism, and rejecting the emotional, ill-conceived ideas of those that would try to strip away your rights. Let's go ahead and get started. Now, if you're watching this video, I don't know which side of the political aisle you're on. You're probably pro-Second Amendment, pro-Bill of Rights, pro-constitutional republic. I would have to assume that. But even if you're not, if you're one of these people that is swayed by emotion, that's swayed by fear, that's swayed by the siren song of just give government more power and society will be awesome. Let me explain something to you. We live in a free society. We live in a society where we have God-given rights and that the government is going to get out of our lives. That's what this country is supposed to be. But over the decades, over the centuries, they've taken an increasing role in our lives. They've taken an increasing role and interjected themselves, all with the promises to make things better, only to be making them infinitely worse as time goes by. And let me start with this premise, that government is predicated upon theft, coercion, and force. They enforce their policies with guns. That's what they do. And if you don't believe me, next time you get your IRS notice and you don't pay it, tell me what happens to you. Tell me if they'll just calmly say, you know what, you really don't have to pay that. We'll just leave it up to you. See, you think that's reasonable? Of course not. So if you don't do what they tell you to do, they're going to come arrest you and throw you in prison. If you don't do what they want you to do, they're going to use agents of government who have firearms, and they're going to make you do that. So that's the first premise. And so I'd really like to take the opportunity in this video, and I'm making this video in the wake of Texas elementary school shooting. And I keep hearing mentally unhinged people saying, if the American people would just give up their guns and let government have a monopoly on force, this sort of thing won't happen again. Do you understand how delusional that premise is? Do you understand how delusional it would be to give government a monopoly on force when they already have a disproportionate level of it that our founders would never have wanted to give a federal government power the way that it has right now? And it's with the increasing interjection into our life that this government, it makes things worse and worse and worse, and has continued to do so over the decades and centuries that people foolishly and naively keep giving to them. It's times like these where we have to speak up and remain steadfast and speak out against this government. And if you notice that what I'm doing here is I'm separating the people from the government. It was originally intended to be a government of the people, for the people, by the people, but it's in direct defiance of that at this point. They are not of us. They are not for us. And they're certainly not by us. They are completely against us. Their aims of government are directly against what we the people want. They don't answer to us anymore. They certainly don't stand up for us. They're the greatest infringers of our freedoms and liberties. They are the direct, all the property that we accumulate through our hard work and effort is taken from them and given to other people, whether in this country or in foreign countries. It's theft. It's, as Bastiat called, plunder. And so I'd like to directly address right now the head of the government, the President of the United States, Joe Biden. His recent points about this are absolutely appalling. He's not a leader. He is reverted back to a man-child in his demented state. He has gone back to an infantile mentality. He's gone back and reverted to preschool emotion and logic, which is very common in demented people. He says in light of this school shooting that he wants to turn pain into action. The problem is, though, is that all of his administration's action do nothing but cause pain. They cause nothing but pain to the American people. Whether that's the tax that comes via inflation because of irresponsible monetary policy, or whether that's the pain caused by people trying to live their lives, heat their houses, cool their houses, go to the grocery store, buy products voluntarily, and the price hikes through his inflation and also energy policies are nothing short of appalling. So his actions do nothing but cause pain. He wants to turn pain into action. That's all his administration does. And I've got $1 million question here, or $1 billion, or $1 trillion question. Do government policies improve your freedom or your liberty? Has government policy ever increased freedom or liberty with people, or is it typically destructive of those things? And I think that if you'll look at history in this country, government action absolutely destroys liberty. Government action takes away property. It destroys lives. The government at this point will claim, oh, we want to stop violence. We want to minimize violence. But I'll ask a question, is there any more violent entity on earth than government? Is there any other entity on earth that causes more death and destruction and violence than the government? Guys, as I'm making this video right now, there are over 200,000 armed bureaucrats with firearms vis-a-vis the federal government. They're the most armed, they're one of the most armed entities on the planet. Now, thank God for our Second Amendment, because we've got tens of millions of people that are armed. And yeah, the government has a lot of guns, but if they had their way, they would make sure they're the only armed people in this country. And trusting government to pass laws that's going to curb violence would be like hiring a pedophile to run a daycare. They're the instigators of violence. They're the ones that enable the conditions that make violence possible. They're the ones that want to make criminals bond out of jail. Violent criminals is what's happened in New York City time after time. You know, the recent subway shooting, the guy was arrested over 20 times, yet he's out. Why? Because of government policy up there. And here's the deal, guys. The Second Amendment was put in place to protect us from them. Full stop. That is the point of the Second Amendment. That is the reason our founders wrote it into the Bill of Rights and recognized it, that it existed even before the country existed. That our Second Amendment, our right to keep and bear arms, existed before the Constitution of the United States in this country, which is our charter of governance, by the way. And they recognize this. And that's why the Second Amendment is in place. Full stop. I could obviously talk about protection against violent criminals. That's self-evident. I could talk about arms are in place to protect our communities against violent criminals. I could list all sorts of facts about gun ownership and violence. I've done that in many videos. I'm not even going to go there in this. And the facts are so overwhelmingly against the official narrative of quote-unquote violence of people with guns that it's not even worth addressing at this point. And the fact that more people are killed with feet and hands than are killed with all rifles combined in this country, that's self-evident. That's factual. You can look up data and official government data at that and figure that one out. So I'm not even going to go there. But the purpose of the Second Amendment is to protect us against them. And that's the paradigm. It is the American people that stand as free men and women, and we stand in defiance against the people that would take it away. And I really don't believe that our government thinks that guns in the hands of people is dangerous, because if that was the case, then why would they spend and send billions of our dollars and guns and equipment to a foreign country, the Ukraine? Why would they send all of our guns and ammo and supplies and say that they're fighting against tyranny? They don't want us to have it because they know that it directly defies them. They know that if the American people continue to be as heavily armed as they are, that they can never subjugate us. They can never control us. And our government knows that an armed citizenry will never be conquered, nor has it ever been conquered. And they know this. So when they're advocating for gun control at the federal level against us, they're doing so because they want to perpetuate and increase their power and control over us. That's why they're doing it. It has nothing to do with safety. And as the president said, the only reason people own AR-15s is to kill someone else. If that was really true, then I guess his Secret Service detail must be nothing short of a death squad. Because they're armed with AR-15s. They're armed with the best ammo our tax dollars can buy. They're armed with the best rifles our tax dollars can buy. And they're constantly around him with AR-15s. So are they a death squad? Are they like Hitler's SS? If that's his statement, that if the only reason people have AR-15s is to kill other people, is his Secret Service detail looking to kill other people? That's absurd. And we have to think about that he, at this point, is against the Constitution. The same one that he raised his right hand and swore to uphold and defend, he's against it. And I think we also have to recognize the enablers of this narrative, which is the mainstream media in this country, that purposely ignores cases of self-defense by people with firearms in this country. And they pick and choose which stories that they want to cover. They'll cover a Buffalo, New York shooting in a grocery store, but then they'll ignore Milwaukee where more people were shot. Oh, geez, I wonder why. Because it doesn't fit their narrative, does it? They intentionally ignore the criminal backgrounds of these people. They purposefully ignore that these people were, in fact, arrested, investigated, and have had mental health problems. They purposely ignore the fact that in many cases, these people do purchase firearms illegally, not legally. Now, at this point, as I'm making this video, there are more firearms laws in this country than any other type, excluding the tax code. And the only thing that we can do at this point is recognize that any further laws, they're not designed to prevent anything. They're designed to prevent only our liberty. They're designed to prevent only our ability to defend ourselves against violent criminals. And yes, those violent criminals oftentimes wear uniforms. And oftentimes those violent criminals act on behalf of the state, and we have to recognize that. It's at this point that you have to realize that many, many people have been duped. And I mean good men and women out there that just don't have the time to investigate this stuff because they're trying to put food on the table for their family. Giving up your guns at this point in time, ladies and gentlemen, is like giving up your life. And you have to recognize that. And it's times like this we have to stand firm. It's times like this that we have to stand defiantly against the very people who would literally enslave us. And we have to look at how this has taken place in other countries around the world. In other countries around the world, people have given up their guns. And as a result, they've given up their own personal sovereignty. And in the United States, the person that adheres to the principles in the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, and Declaration of Independence will remain free. The people that give up those rights will continue to be enslaved and terrorized and subjugated and violently attacked by criminals. No, we have to stop and think during times like this, and we can't respond emotionally like people in the media or on talk shows or people that are millionaires lecturing us about the inequality in this country. No, they are children in an adult's body and debate and argue exactly like that. No, ladies and gentlemen, all this is on purpose. The timing is on purpose. You have to wonder all this time the Supreme Court is gonna rule on Bruin versus New York, and all of a sudden this stuff comes out, and you have to wonder why. You have to wonder why. What's the point? And do understand that television programming, that word programming, is there for a very specific reason. But you got to transcend that with your mind. You have to transcend that as your ability to think critically. And you have to stop and think and then make your decision based on logic rather than emotion. And ladies and gentlemen, here's the thing. You know, every week we train people how to defend their rights. Every single week we train people how to defend themselves against violent criminals here at Valor Ridge. That's what we do. We enable and empower people through freedom rather than coercion. Everybody that comes here on their own accord, and they leave much better equipped to protect themselves against violent criminals than before they got here. If you found the information in the video helpful, subscribe to the channel, follow me on social media. That link is down below. And if you want to learn your country's heritage, you want to learn how to protect yourself from violent criminals in and out of uniform, come out to Valor Ridge and we can help you. This is Reid Henrichs of Valor Ridge reminding you, the lessons that we learn are written on the tombstones of others, and the people in those tombstones were often put there by government.